Hello, this is Professor Hazera, and hopefully my recorder is working today. This is going to be the final. These two modules, or they're kind of the same module actually, are going to be the three actually, are going to be the last parts of this course. And they're all three on international accounting. And in traditionally this course, we covered just the basic aspects of international accounting. It can be very complicated, but what's traditionally covered in this course is the basics of foreign currency accounting. Okay, and we're going to cover both foreign currency transactions and foreign currency financial statements. Okay, and let's go through. I'm just going to start this first video. I'm going to try to keep each of these videos and examples short because in the foreign currency transactions topic, and then try to keep them down to 10 minutes or so, 10 to 15 minutes. Okay, this first one will be short. So in this first video here, I'm just going to go over some very basic definitions that you need to know when you're dealing with foreign currency transactions. Basically, these are what you got to know. We got to know the basic definitions of exchange rates. Now, there's a lot of definitions of exchange rates, but we'll just go through two here. First one, we'll go through two. The next one are what we call foreign currency receivables, and that's when you've sold something to a company overseas and you debit accounts receivable and credit sales. So you have an account receivable that on your books, but it's owed in the foreign currency. That means denominated in foreign currency, because sometimes when you sell a good to a foreign company, the receivables, what we say, is denominated in the foreign currency, which means it can only be received in the foreign currency. Once, what it really means is once the foreign company gives you the money to satisfy the receivable, that then it's done. But the problem with that is that if the foreign currency receivable can only be settled in the foreign currency, the receivable itself is exposed to fluctuations in the exchange rate. So if somebody owes you 100 euros, and that means that the value of those euros goes up and down that they owe you, which means the value of the receivable that they owe you goes up and down with the exchange rate. If the dollar gets stronger, you win. If the dollar gets weaker, you lose. Okay, and that's what we call a net asset position. Net asset position, net exposed asset position, basically is when somebody owes you a receivable and it's not hedged. You haven't taken some action to minimize or eliminate the fluctuations in the receivable due to changes in the exchange rate. So if you sell to somebody some calculators or some computers to a European company and they owe you euros, if it's on credit and the contract says the receivable is denominated only in euros, that means that that contract will be settled when they pay you the euros. But since it's denominated in euros, the value of the euros they're going to give you between now and the time they pay you, the value of that, which is the value of the receivable, goes up and down. So with the exchange rate, so one strategy. That means that receivable is exposed, which means that you can hedge. There's ways to hedge, which means hedging means eliminating the risk of exposure, at least to some extent. So you can hedge an exposed net asset position. So we're going to discuss, and once you understand these two things, you'll understand that the last two transactions. But we're going to discuss what I'll give you an example. We're going to use a worksheet of what an exposed net asset position is, and which is basically you sell something on credit to an overseas firm, and they can settle the receivable in the foreign currency. That means the value of the receivable is dependent on the value of the exchange rate. But you can hedge. The word hedge means eliminate the risk or minimize the risk. You can hedge the fluctuations in the receivable due to the exchange rate by undertaking what we call a forward contract, which we'll talk about later. And then foreign currency payables are going to be the exact opposite. Exposed net liability positions are basically when you buy something from a foreign company on credit, and you can only settle the payable in the foreign currency, which means that either you have to have foreign currency in your pocket in order to be able to pay the payable, or you've got to buy it from a bank or exchange broker. And that's a problem because let's say you buy something for somebody from a European firm for 100 euros, between now and the time that you're going to pay the payable, the cost of those euros may go up, which means that your payable, you would owe more because you would have to pay more dollars to buy those euros, or it could go down, which you would. And now, once again, as you can guess, there's you can hedge that, so you could actually hedge the cost of those euros that it would take you to settle the foreign currency payable. And we're going to do that through forward contracts, by the way, we call forward contract. And the final thing is we probably won't do this foreign purchase commitments, which the first two types of transactions, foreign currency receivables, foreign currency payables, you'll understand foreign purchase commitments. Okay, now one caveat as I go through here. Now these transactions are, you'll notice the title is the traditional accounting for foreign currency denominated transactions. This is the traditional approach, and it's really the logical approach, but it's not quite the way it's done now. The reason I like to do this is because when you do it this way, people understand the logic, and after you understand the logic of hedging, then we will go into the contemporary way, so to speak, the new rules that were passed a few years ago on this type of transaction. Okay, now just before we start, I'm going to stop this video after this slide, and then we'll get into a worksheet. Okay, but here's some basic transactions that mention exchange rates that you got to know. Spot rate versus forward rate. This is pretty basic. Spot rate in any market is the current market rate for the currency, and that's true for any market, for cars, whatever. So spot rate is simply the current rate. Obviously, it fluctuates from minute to minute, from day to day. A forward rate. Now, a forward rate is a contracted rate, and you'll notice that last sentence, a forward contract can be used to hedge foreign currency denominated transactions. What forward contracts are there contracts that will lock the rate into the future. So let's say the market projects that the future exchange rate for the euro will be $1.15. So let's say that in 30 days the market, you're dealing now, and in 30 days the market thinks that the rate for the euro will be $1.15. Well, you can sign a forward contract with an exchange broker or a bank, and what the forward contract does is it locks in the rate that you will pay for those euros. And we're going to use forward contracts as our hedging instrument. Forward contracts are instruments that lock in the predicted exchange rate in the future. So you could lock in. So if the market thinks that the rate in the future will be $1.15, you can actually sign a forward contract to buy foreign currency at $1.15 30 days from now. Now, whether you win or lose on that, depends on whether the exchange rate goes up or down. That's a gambling aspect. But if you combine it if you combine two transactions, a regular transaction with a forward transaction, you offset one against the other. That's going to be the hedge. Okay, and then finally, let's see, direct versus indirect exchange rates. This is very big stuff, especially if you've ever traveled. A direct exchange rate is how many units of domestic currency it says it costs to purchase 1 unit of foreign currency. For example, it typically costs $1.20 US dollars to purchase 1 euro. That's kind of average. That goes up and down over the months. That would be the direct exchange rate. So direct exchange rate from the US dollar's perspective to purchase 1 euro would be you take $1.20 to the exchange broker, and they give you 1 euro in exchange. The indirect exchange rate is the units of foreign currency that 1 unit of domestic currency is worth, and it's just the reciprocal of the direct exchange rate. So 1 unit of US dollar is worth, the indirect exchange rate would be 1 divided by 120, which turns out to be about 83 cents, which is saying that $1 is worth 83 cents of a euro. That's all it means. Okay, so I think I'm done with this video, and I'll put this up, and then we'll continue from there. We're going to continue with a worksheet. Okay, so we'll stop this one.